Hello everyone, I'm Lak Lakshmanan. I lead analytics and AI solutions on Google Cloud. And today I want to answer a question that I get asked a lot by founders and engineers launching a startup. And the question is, what kind of a technology stack should I pick? What are some of the considerations that I need to keep in mind as I design the architecture for my startup, realizing that I may have to start small, but I want to have the ability to scale in the future? Let's say you're launching a startup on the cloud. What kind of technology stack are you going to choose? Well, even though you're thinking about a technology stack, I think you should step back a little bit and think carefully about the major value proposition that your startup offers to your customers. Because a value proposition is going to fundamentally drive the kind of technology that you're going to pick. For example, does your system need real time? Or can it be done in a batch mode? Can you just provide once a day insights? Or do the insights have to be provided as and when events happen? Think also about the latency that your customers will face, right? That's the latency that makes your value proposition either usable or unusable. For example, early on in Google's development, there was this realization that no one was going to wait more than a few hundred milliseconds for a web page of results. And that drove the kind of technology decisions that Google made. And that has allowed Google to scale from being a startup in a garage to being $1 trillion company. And that's something that you want to think about as well, because the way that you design your stack for that value proposition is really, really hard to change. Now, a few companies have done it. Netflix, for example, has done it, where they've basically moved from sending DVDs over the mail to becoming a streaming service. But just because someone has done it doesn't mean that you should plan to be able to do that. So that's the first thing I would really encourage you to think about, is what is that major value proposition that you're going to offer. Secondly, think about how the customers are going to access your business. Typically, they're going to do that over a website. Maybe they're going to do that over a mobile app. But are they going to use voice? Are they going to send you documents? If they're going to send you documents, what format are those documents going to be in? Are they going to be handwritten documents? Are they going to be typed up? Is it going to be mostly forms, right? Is it going to be very structured? Is it going to be unstructured? Take the example that you have a business and most of your customers are going to access through voice. Well, if that's the case, now you want to really prioritize conversational workflows. And you want to think about the productivity of the people that are building your systems. And let's say, for example, you decide that you're going to use Dialogflow because it allows you to set up conversational workflows really easily. Well, that allows you to power the conversational agent, but that agent needs to interact with the backend. How is that backend going to work? How much of it is going to be kiosk based in a mobile phone? How much of it is going to basically have to be accessed over low bandwidth connections? So what I really encourage you to do is, when it comes to user interactions, come up with an end-to-end use case. For example, let's say you're building a retail website. One of your end-to-end use cases might be the customer says, do you have 10 items of this thing in stock? And your goal is that if you don't have 10 of those items, you will look for similar items and you will offer the customer something that is similar for which you do have 10 items in stock. That might be your end-to-end use case. And you want to think about whether your technology stack is going to support that. Now, you know your business best, right? I don't. So what I would say is pick one end-to-end use case, write it down. Now go ahead and pick. So the first use case might be the technically complex but still pretty feasible. Next, pick 2 more use cases, and those 2 use cases should be the bread and butter use cases. The thing that is going to get done by 90% of your customers, 90% of the time, that's what they're going to be doing. Take 2 of those bread and butter use cases, one technologically challenging but still feasible one, and make sure that your technology stack can support all 3 of these use cases. Now, once you've identified these use cases, once you know that this is the end-to-end use case that you want to drive, now you're ready to think about the technology stack itself. So now, when you're talking about the technology stack, there's a few basic principles that I think work regardless of whether it is analytics and AI or whether it is application development or any technology. The first thing is that you want to build at the highest level of abstraction that's possible. This is because you're a startup. You want to save on resources. For example, you don't want your people setting up clusters. You don't want them configuring things if they can use a fully managed service. So the other thing that you want to think about is, do you want, the answer is not always machine learning. The answer might be heuristics to start, and then replace that heuristics by machine learning once you have collected enough data. Right? So you want to make sure that your layer, your intelligence layer, has enough of an abstraction that you can mock it up with simple rules at first, but then you can replace it with a truly intelligent system further down as you go along. So that's the thing that you want to think about, right? So you want to think about building for a small number of products at the highest level of abstraction, and having done that, right, you basically start to pick your technology stack. So this is exactly what Google has been built for. So when you're using Google Cloud, all of our Marquee services, BigQuery, Dataflow, Vertex AI, PubSub, these are all auto-scaling, serverless. They allow you to forget about infrastructure. Even when you're talking about infrastructure, you want to think about not using Kubernetes, but using GKE. Maybe not even using GKE, maybe using GKE Autopilot, maybe using Cloud Run. So go as high up in the abstraction stack as possible. Pick a tool that has been built for that particular job. You are almost always better off buying the right tool, even if it seems more expensive in the short run, because think about it, the most expensive resource that you have is the cost of your people. And you really want them to be focused on insights, on building something that is new, that's novel, because you want to launch fast, you want to scale fast. And the only way that you can do that is by focusing on the things that make you differentiated. So bottom line then, if I were to say, how do you pick a technology stack for your startup? 3 principles. First principle, figure out what the major value proposition is that you'll offer, and you design the tech stack for that value proposition. So that determines the kind of system that you will build. Secondly, be very careful about how the user interaction becomes. User experience is super important, and you want to make sure that you allow for the kind of user experience that your customers will have grown to expect. And thirdly, you want to, when you're building, you want to pick the highest level of abstraction possible, the most managed tool that you can, that gives you the functionality that you need.